Right now is a critical time to be direct and straightforward with all of your clients. Hope in a market like this is not a plan at all. If you have seller clients that are not finding success, it comes down to three things, right? We all know this: price, condition, and marketing. If you've done everything you can about the marketing, you know it's got to be one of those two categories, both of which fall squarely on their shoulders. Which means what? You have to have an uncomfortable conversation either about the price or about preparing the property differently. If you have a buyer client on the other side, they're making offers, but they're not getting the house. What is it? They've made 2 or 3 offers, maybe 10, 15% below market because they're reading the headlines, hearing the sky's falling, when in reality, things have shifted 1%, 2 to 3 maybe, but you're going their way because you don't want to upset them too much. But in reality, they hired you to do what? Get them the house. That means we have to start having some hard conversations. And just thinking about that, your heart rate goes up. Difficult conversations are tough. But remember this, so are you. Becoming more comfortable with difficult conversations is the goal, and it's the difference between your business thriving over the next 6 to 12 months or you potentially falling on your face. I know in my career, when I deconstruct my best years, it's simply the ability to navigate those difficult discussions with my seller or buyer clients. If they're not having success, I'm not having success. So we're in the same boat, but we have to be willing to go against the things that they want in the short term to get them the long-term goal that they're after. And that might mean ruffling some feathers, and that's perfectly fine. You are no more born capable of having difficult conversations than you are to run a triathlon. Having difficult conversations is like a muscle you can develop just by having more of them. Here are 3 tips that I use frequently to have these difficult conversations, and right now it's more critical than ever. Hopefully they help you too. Number 1, I use email quite a bit, text as well, but either way, the written word to convey the message that I need to convey to either my seller or buyer client that isn't having success. A lot of people will probably disagree with me, but think of it this way. If the goal is to get out the truth, compassionately but straightforward, and get it all out so they have the best information so they can make the best decisions possible, what better way than to write down concisely what is the truth? You can edit it, you can make sure you have everything in there that needs to be there, and you can review it. When everything looks right, send it off. Conversely, try getting on the phone, starting the conversation. They're going from a 2 to a 5, and now they're at an 8. They're pissed off. You're telling them we got to drop the price, we got to paint everything, and they are a mess by this point. And so there's one last thing you need to say, and it might be the most critical, but by this point, you're not taking them to a 10, so you balk in the 11th hour, and it doesn't come out. They don't have the full picture yet, do they? So I find that having that email discussion mitigates all that. You don't have to have these highly charged emotional discussions when it's over text. You can send the facts, let them send back what they think are the facts, and make a decision. So number 1, I use the written word quite a bit when it comes to having difficult conversations. Number 2, I try to frame the absolute worst case scenario before I have the discussion. In other words, what am I really wagering here? Are they going to light my house on fire? Hopefully not. Jokes aside, you got 1 or 2 things that are the worst case scenario. They fire you. They find someone else to help them out. High risk, understandable. Or number 2, you hurt a lot of feelings and you have to have a really uncomfortable moment or 2 with them. But likely those are the 2 worst outcomes that will come from all this. So I tell myself, am I willing to get fired as long as it's the truth? And the answer is usually yes. Why? Because if they are going to fire me over just telling them the things that they need to hear, it probably wasn't going to work anyway. So that one's an easy thing to put to the side. Hurting feelings, especially if they're a friend or someone I care for, it's a little trickier. But again, I ask myself, would I rather them have the truth and be a little bit upset with me, or go down the road of being unsuccessful and have to have those difficult conversations? So either way, I'm having one. It's just now in the truth or later with the market continuing to disappoint them. And so when I frame it that way, it gets a whole lot easier, takes a lot of the teeth out of the thing. I don't have to worry so much. It's a tough talk. And number 3, this is a big one. I find comfort in the fact that I'm telling the truth. If I tell them everything that is the truth, I've done my job. It's what they brought me on. When they signed the listing agreement, when they signed a buyer agency agreement, that's what they were signing. To have representation. That will be their eyes, ears, their guide. Someone that will help them transact in a way that they couldn't otherwise do on their own. Someone to help them buy and sell at a higher level than they were able to do before they brought me on. And if I know something's standing in the way of them having success, and it's the truth, and I say it with compassion, I've got really nothing to worry about. I'm just doing my job. Imagine having a doctor or a lawyer who just didn't want to hurt your feelings and ended up in jail because they didn't tell you the truth, or you end up dying of a disease because they just didn't want to tell you and there were treatment options available prior to all that happening. I mean, it'd be malpractice, it would be the absolute worst case scenario, and it'd be a whole lot worse than if they just ruffled your feathers, right? So our job is to tell the truth. And sometimes that isn't that fun, but those are the three ways that I think about this. The email tactic is something that I find really helpful, but the other two are more of like framing the reality of the situation. We'll end this where we began. Right now, it is critical that you are direct and straightforward with all of your clients. Hope and optimism that things will get better is not a plan. So having these difficult discussions is the difference between your business thriving and growing over the next 6 to 12 months versus maybe falling on your face and having far worse outcomes.